Now we're going to review linear functions and the equations of these lines. Hopefully some of these equations you'll remember from Algebra 1, but if not, we'll go over them just real quickly too. So we're going to write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form satisfying the given conditions. Well, do you remember that slope-intercept form is actually that y is equal to mx plus b, where b is your y-intercept and m is your slope. Okay, so for the first one, we've got a slope is negative 2/3. Well, that tells me that m is negative 2/3. The y-intercept is negative 1, so b is negative 1. If we're putting it in that y equals mx plus b format, it's just y is equal to 2/3 x minus 1. So here we're told a horizontal line that goes through 5, negative 1. Well, remember, a horizontal line is one that's just going to be straight like that somewhere on your coordinate grid. And I always think of those as hoys. So a vertical line is a vex and a horizontal line is a hoy. And so a horizontal line is just always that y is equal to some number. Well, if it goes through this point, it goes through my y value, so y is negative 1. And that's the equation for the horizontal line. Now we're given 2 points on the line, and we're told to put this equation in slope-intercept form. Well, given 2 points, the only thing that we can solve for is our slope. And maybe you remember that formula. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So remember, this is like your x1, your y1, here's your x2, and your y2. So let's just go fill out this formula and find out what our slope is. So y2, negative 1, minus a negative 3 makes that plus 3. Then negative 7 minus 5. Okay, so negative 1 plus 3 is 2, and negative 7 minus 5 is negative 12. So we can reduce that down to negative 1/6. Okay, so now we know m is negative 1/6. Well, we had another formula that we used to use. It's called the point slope formula. And it's y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And so for this, we already know what our m is, what our slope is, but we can choose either one of these points on the line. I'm just going to choose the 5, negative 3 that we know, and that's going to be my x1 and my y1 in that equation. So we're just going to go fill that out. So y minus y1, which is negative 3, so that makes that a positive 3, is equal to m, which is negative 1/6, times x minus x1, which is 5. Okay, and that's that equation in point slope formula, but we want to try to go put it in slope intercept formula, so we're just going to have to start solving for y here. So negative 1/6 x, that makes that plus 5/6. And then all we have to do is subtract our 3. Well, remember, if we're subtracting fractions, we've got to have a common denominator, so that's like 3/1. So we want to make that something over 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. So that ends up with the slope-intercept formula. Y is equal to negative 1/6 x. We've got a positive 5/6 minus 18/6. So that should give us a negative 13/6. There's your formula. Okay, so now it's parallel to the line 3x plus 4y is equal to 7, and it goes through the point 6, negative 1. Well, anytime we see this word parallel, we should automatically be thinking it's got the same slope. Well, what's the slope of this equation? Well, remember, if we put it in y equals mx plus b, we're told what that slope is with the m. Okay, so let's just work on that. So let's move our 3x over. So that gives us negative 4y is equal to negative 3x plus 7. Divide everything by negative 4. So y is equal to 3/4 x, because negative divided by negative makes it a positive, minus 7/4. Well, remember now, it's in this format, so I know 3/4 is my slope. So I'm given slope is 3/4, and a point on the line is 6, -1. So again, we can use that point slope formula. So y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1, and we'll just go fill that out and then put it in slope-intercept formula. So y minus -1 means plus 1 is equal to 3/4 times x minus 6. So y plus 1 is equal to 3/4 x minus 18/4. Well, now we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. And remember that 1, anything over itself is 1, so we're just going to subtract 4 over 4 so that we've got those common denominators. Is 3/4 x minus 22 over 4s, which that could reduce and become y is equal to 3/4 x minus 11/2. So you always want to reduce those fractions if you can. Okay. So a few more here. Undefined slope with the same x-intercept as the line 3x plus 2y is equal to -6. Well, an undefined slope is a vertical line. And so always think of vex. So that's a vertical line, so it's x is equal to some number. So if we find out what that x-intercept is, we know what our x is. So the x-intercept, we solve for that when we set y equal to 0. So remember, anything on that, if you're looking at your coordinate grid, and anything on this x-axis here, y is equal to 0, any point along there. So we've got 3x plus 2 times y is 0 is equal to -6. So 3x is equal to -6. Divide by 3. So x is equal to -2. Well, if x is equal to -2, it crosses my x-axis at -2. That's got to be what my vertical line looks like, and that would be the equation for the vertical line. All right, so next we're going to review distance and midpoint real quick. Let's see, we've got our two formulas here. I think we're doing one of each. So let's say here's our distance formula is equal to the square root of the difference in our x values squared plus the difference in our y values squared. Okay, so remember, every ordered pair is x and y. So there's our first one, there's our second one. So we're just going to fill out that formula. So distance is equal to the difference in our x values, where our x values are -3 minus 7 squared plus the difference in our y's, 5 minus 2 squared. All right, so -3 minus 7 is -10. And we're going to square that, plus 5 minus 2 is 3 squared. Well, the -10 squared is 100, and 3 squared is 9. So that gives me the square root of 109, which is approximately, let's say, 10.4 would be your answer. Okay, so the midpoint formula is when we take our x values, add them together and divide by 2, and that will give us the x value of the midpoint. And then we're going to take our y values and divide by 2, add those together and divide by 2, and that gives you the y value of your midpoint. So remember, you're just looking for that ordered pair. That formula looks a little scary, but really it's sort of like two different formulas. So if we are looking for the x value, we're going to take those two, -3 plus 7, and divide by 2. And so -3 plus 7 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. The y value, or going to add up our y values, so 5 plus 2 divided by 2, so 5 plus 2 is 7 divided by 2, that just stays 7/2. We can't reduce that, and we like fractions. So now our ordered pair, x value 2, y value 7/2, there is your midpoint. All right, now we're going to solve a couple of system of equations. This is just like an entire linear review here, so I know it's a little bit long, but we should just be a refresher because we should know all this stuff. So solving a system of equations, remember we learned we could graph each of them and see where they intersect, and that would be the point where they are equal to each other. We can use substitution, or we can use elimination. So on this first one, it looks like maybe elimination might be the best one to do here. Sometimes we call it the addition method, but I'm going to take this first equation, I'm going to multiply it by a -1, and that's going to give me the new equation. I'm going to put right down here, -x minus y is equal to -7. And all I did was multiply -1 times everything on that first one. So then we add these two equations together. So 2x minus x gives us x. Our y values will cancel out, which is the point of the addition method. So x is equal to 5 plus a -7 is -2. Once you find one of the variables, then you just go back and you take one of the equations and substitute that, what you found. So the x is -2 plus y is equal to 7. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides, so y is 9. So the point where these two equations intersect is at 2, 9, -2, 9. Okay, so for this last one here, this is a good one to use the substitution method. And what I usually do is set up a t-chart with both equations on here. And this one is good for substitution because it's already solved for y. So we know y is equal to 6x, and when we use substitution, we just say, well, if y is 6x, then we're going to come stick that in the other equation for the y value, and then we're down to one variable, so we can solve. So we've got 3x minus y, but y is 6x is equal to 6. So we've got -3x is equal to 6. Divide both sides by -3, so x is -2. Well, now that we know that x is -2, we can go plug it in the other one. So y is 6 times x, which is -2, so y is -12. So the point where these two lines intersect, or where they are equal to each other, is -2, -12. And remember, x value always goes first, y value always goes second. All right.